Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Here's something to wrap your head around. The single biggest risk factor for Alzheimer's disease isn't, something you catch, it's simply getting older.
That's right. It's a stark fact.
But hold on, because here's the really interesting part. What we do as we age, our lifestyle choices, can dramatically influence our brain health.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We're looking at the powerful link between exercise, specifically the kind that gets your heart pumping endurance exercise, and what scientists call cardiorespiratory fitness, and how it affects our brains as we age.
Right. Exploring how moving your body can actually kind of protect your mind.
Think of it exactly like that, yeah. A neuroprotective force.
And to help us unpack all this, we've looked at a really comprehensive review. It was just published in The Lancet, a major medical journal.
A very well-respected source. It pulls together a huge amount of scientific research on this specific topic.
We're also bringing in some context from a health news article, just to help paint the full picture of what this means for you listening right now.
Our mission today really is to break down those key findings and figure out what are the practical takeaways?
Okay, so this big review in The Lancet, what was its main goal? What were they trying to figure out?
Well, the primary aim was to really understand how endurance exercise safeguards the brain. They wanted to pinpoint the
Mechanisms, okay.
and also to highlight just how vital a good level of heart and lung fitness that cardiorespiratory fitness is for keeping our brains healthy as we get older.
So how did they go about it? I mean, combing through all that research sounds like a massive task.
It absolutely is. They did a very thorough literature search. They used specific keywords related to exercise, physical activity, cardiorespiratory fitness.
In brain aging, neuroprotection, all that.
Exactly, all those different facets. They specifically focused on influential, highly relevant studies, and they stuck to English language publications for this review.
Got it. So what's the headline here? If you had to boil it down, what's the main connection they found?
The key discovery, really, is that your cardiorespiratory fitness, basically, how well your heart and lungs deliver oxygen, acts as a kind of middleman. It mediates the brain-protecting effects of exercise.
Mediates? How so?
It does this through several key mechanisms. First, improving blood flow to the brain. Second, helping reduce harmful inflammation or swelling in the brain. And third, boosting neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity, that's the brain's ability to adapt and change, right? Form new connections.
Precisely. Its ability to rewire itself, essentially.
Okay, let's take that first one. Blood flow to the brain, cerebral blood flow. Why is that so critical?
Think of it like the brain's lifeline. It delivers absolutely everything the brain needs to function. Oxygen for energy, vital nutrients, and also these special proteins called neurotrophins.
Neurotrophins, like helpers for brain cells.
Exactly. They help neurons stay healthy, grow, even survive. And what's fascinating is that exercise, both a single session and regular training over time, increases this blood flow.
To the whole brain or specific areas.
It's been shown to increase in several key regions, including the hippocampus, which is crucial for learning and memory. And this happens in both younger and older adults.
And that increase is linked to fitness levels.
Yes, strongly. These increases in cerebral blood flow correlate quite well with improvements in cardiorespiratory fitness.
So how does exercise actually do that? How does it physically get more blood flowing up there?
Well, scientists have a couple of leading ideas. One involves the increased production of something called endothelial nitric oxide synthase.
Okay, that's a mouthful. What does it do?
Yes. Think of it as the natural signal your body produces that helps blood vessels relax and widen. Wider vessels mean easier blood flow, including to the brain.
Makes sense. And the other idea?
The other possibility is that exercise might slightly increase the permeability of the blood-brain barrier.
The brain's security gate, making it a bit easier for things to pass through.
Sort of. Potentially allowing more efficient delivery of that oxygen and those nutrients we talked about. Still needs more research, but it's a plausible mechanism.
We often hear about things shrinking a bit as we age. Does that happen to the brain too? And how does blood flow tie in?
Yes. Unfortunately, aging is often associated with a natural reduction in cerebral blood flow. And this decrease can contribute to some shrinkage in important brain areas, like the hippocampus.
And that impacts function, presumably.
Absolutely. Reduced blood flow can compromise brain function. Even short interruptions can damage nerve cells and lead to cognitive difficulties. But, and this is a crucial point, exercise seems to mitigate that.
Mitigate the shrinkage.
Yes. exercise appears to lessen this age-related brain atrophy, especially in the hippocampus.
That's really encouraging. You mentioned the hippocampus is key for memory. Did the review look specifically at studies on its size?
It did. They discussed several meta-analyses, those studies that combine results from many individual studies.
And what did they find about exercise and hippocampal volume?
Well, there were some slight inconsistencies. Some studies showed effects more on the left side, some on the right, some on the total volume.
Why the differences?
It could be down to things like how many people were in each study, or the exact type and length of the exercise programs they used. Different protocols,
Sure, that makes sense.
But the overall takeaway from these combined analyses is pretty clear. Exercise generally helps maintain the size of the hippocampus. It helps prevent that age-related shrinkage.
Maintain it? Does it ever increase it?
Interestingly, yes. Some research show that even just 6 weeks of exercise could increase hippocampal volume in previously sedentary adults.
Wow, only 6 weeks.
Yeah, pretty fast. Though, the caveat is those gains might reverse if the person stops exercising again. Consistency seems key.
So it really sounds like it's never too late to start. What if someone picks up endurance exercise later in life?
Absolutely beneficial. The review really emphasizes this. Endurance exercise started later in life is still neuroprotective.
Can you give an example?
Sure. One study they cited found that older adults doing moderate intensity endurance exercise for just 1 year showed an increase in hippocampal size.
An increase, not just maintenance.
An increase. And they also had better spatial memory performance. Another study linked improvements in cardiorespiratory fitness over just 3 months to increased volume in a specific part of the hippocampus and better cognitive scores in older adults.
That's fantastic news. And are these brain benefits limited only to the hippocampus?
No, not at all. Regular endurance exercise seems to trigger structural changes in other brain areas too.
Like what?
For instance, doing moderate intensity activity for 12 weeks was shown to increase the thickness of the cortex.
The cortex. That's the wrinkly outer layer involved in thinking.
That's the one, responsible for higher level cognition.
Yeah.
And this thickening was seen in both people with mild cognitive issues and healthy older adults.
Any other examples?
Yes, a 6-month walking program for previously inactive older adults resulted in increased volume in several different brain areas, not just the hippocampus.
So wider benefits. Are these studies mostly short-term?
Many of the intervention studies are, often less than a year. But there is longer-term research emerging. The review mentions the Generation 100 study, which ran for 5 years.
And what did that suggest?
It suggested that maintaining good cardiorespiratory fitness over the long haul protects against losing brain volume and structural integrity, particularly in those brain regions most sensitive to aging.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The review also mentioned neuroinflammation. What's the link between inflammation, aging, and exercise?
Right. So as we age, our brain's immune system can change. A common feature of accelerated brain aging is this chronic, low-grade inflammation, sometimes called inflammaging.
Inflammaging. I like that term.
It involves brain immune cells called microglia becoming activated and releasing pro-inflammatory substances, like cytokines.
And exercise helps how?
Exercise, even moderate activity, seems to help counteract this.
Yeah.
It can help stabilize those inflammatory cytokines and generally improve immune function.
How? Does it, calm the microglia down?
That's part of the thinking. Also, exercise can reduce overall body fat, especially adipose tissue. And fat tissue itself is a source of pro-inflammatory signals. So less fat tissue might mean fewer inflammatory signals reaching the brain.
Interesting. What about really intense exercise? Doesn't that cause some stress?
It can, yes. Very strenuous exercise can create temporary oxidative stress. But the flip side is that regular exercise also enhances our body's own antioxidant defenses.
Yeah.
So over time, it makes us better equipped to handle that stress.
Okay. The review also touched on other cellular processes like mitochondria, the cell's power plants, and calcium handling. How do they fit in?
Both mitochondrial function and how cells manage calcium tend to become less efficient with age. This can impact neuron function and even survival.
And exercise.
While we need more direct evidence, specifically in the aging human brain, exercise is known to boost factors like brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Ah, that protein again.
Yes. And it can help regulate calcium levels inside neurons, potentially protecting them.
Yeah.
So the idea is exercise might help mitochondria handle calcium better, acting as another protective layer.
What about cellular cleanup? Getting rid of old or damaged parts?
Good question. Processes like autophagy and proteasomal degradation. The cell's recycling and waste disposal systems also decline with age. But exercise, particularly in older adults, seems to counteract these declines, promoting better cellular housekeeping.
It sounds like exercise helps keep the brain's machinery running smoothly on multiple levels.
That's a great way to put it.
Let's talk about that adaptability again, neuroplasticity. How does exercise keep our brains adaptable?
Neuroplasticity is just fundamental for learning and memory. It involves structural changes like growing new neurons or changing connections.
And functional changes, like how strong those connections are.
Exactly. Synaptic plasticity, the strengthening or weakening of those connections or synapses, is crucial. And while this tends to decline with age, exercise, both acute and chronic, enhances it.
So exercise helps keep those connections flexible.
Yes. Animal studies show exercise improves the complexity of neuron branches, called dendrites, and helps form new connection points, or spines. And we see evidence of enhanced synaptic plasticity in physically active adults, too.
What about creating totally new neurons? Adult neurogenesis.
That's the process, yeah. It happens throughout life, mainly in the hippocampus, and it's important for certain cognitive functions. The rate does slow down with age, unfortunately.
But exercise can boost it.
In animal models, exercise is a very strong stimulus for hippocampal neurogenesis, even when started later in life. Whether and how much it stimulates this process in humans is still an active area of investigation. It's harder to measure directly in people.
Right. And you mentioned brain-derived neurotrophic factor earlier. Let's circle back to that. Why is it so central?
It's just a really key player. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor supports neuron survival, growth, development, and, as we said, synaptic plasticity.
And levels decline with age.
They do tend to decrease, yes, which likely contributes to some of the age-related cognitive decline, maybe loss of synapses and hippocampal shrinkage.
But exercise boosts it.
Consistently shown, yes. Exercise increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor in animal brains and also the levels circulating in human blood.
Is it the same effect for everyone?
Potentially not. There's a common genetic variation in the gene for brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the Val66Met polymorphism, that can affect how much is released in response to exercise. So some people might get a bigger boost than others due to their genetics.
Fascinating. Now, something else mentioned was cellular senescence. What's that about?
Senescent cells are basically cells that have stopped dividing but don't die off. They kind of hang around and release harmful substances that can promote inflammation and damage nearby tissues.
Zombie cells.
Yeah, that's one way people describe them, yes. They accumulate in the aging brain and are linked to neurodegenerative diseases.
And exercise.
Promising results here. Studies have shown exercise can reduce biomarkers associated with cellular senescence, so potentially helping clear out these problematic cells.
Okay, now for this term that really caught my eye. Exerkines. Sounds futuristic. What are they?
They're pretty exciting. Exerkines are basically signaling molecules, proteins, metabolites, hormones released by various tissues, especially muscle, but also liver, fat tissue, during and after exercise.
So exercise makes our body send out messages.
Exactly. These messages travel through the bloodstream, and some can cross the blood-brain barrier to influence brain function.
And exercise might even help them get across that barrier.
That's the thinking, yes. By potentially increasing that permeability slightly, more of these beneficial exerkines might reach the brain. Different types of exercise might even release different cocktails of exerkines.
Amazing. Can you give us some examples? We mentioned brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Right, that can act as an exerkine.
Yeah.
Another is platelet factor. 4 studies suggest it might promote new neuron growth in the hippocampus.
Yep.
Then there's one called fibronectin type 3 domain containing protein 5, or FNDC5, which gets cleaved into irisin.
Irisin.
Yes. Exercise boosts irisin. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it seems involved in synaptic plasticity, cognitive function, maybe even neurogenesis.
What else?
Interleukin-6 is interesting. It's an inflammatory cytokine released during exercise, which sounds bad, but it seems crucial for the body's positive adaptations to training. Cathepsin B is linked to clearing waste products and memory improvements.
Keep going. This is fascinating.
Okay. Vascular endothelial growth factor helps build new blood vessels in the brain.
Yeah.
Insulin-like growth factor 1, fibroblast growth factor 21, adiponectin, lactate, beta-hydroxybutyrate, clotho, the anti-aging protein. The list is growing.
Wow. And they all potentially help the brain in different ways.
Yes, linked to neurogenesis, synaptic plasticity, blood vessel formation, learning, memory. It seems exercise orchestrates this whole symphony of beneficial signals sent to the brain.
It's not just muscle sending signals, though. The review mentioned gut and oral bacteria.
Right, another really hot area of research. Exercise appears to improve the diversity and function of our gut microbiota. the bacteria living in our gut.
And that's linked to brain health?
Increasingly so, yes. Via metabolic pathways, immune signaling. It's complex, but there's a definite connection. And cardiorespiratory fitness levels correlate strongly with gut bacteria composition.
What about the mouth?
A similar story, though less studied. Exercise seems to promote a healthier oral microbiome, and the changes observed are often opposite to those seen in brain aging and neurological disorders. Suggests another potential protective pathway.
So much going on. What are the big practical takeaways from all this for someone listening?
I think the most empowering takeaway is that we can be proactive about our brain health through exercise. It's not just something that happens to us.
And it's not just about logging hours, right? Intensity matters.
That seems increasingly clear, yes. It's not only the quantity, but also the quality or intensity of the activity.
Yeah.
All these mechanisms, better blood flow, less inflammation, more adaptability, those helpful Exerkines, they translate into tangible benefits.
Like better thinking, better memory.
Exactly. Better cognitive function, memory, and potentially a reduced risk of serious cognitive decline and dementia down the line.
It sounds incredibly positive. But science always has caveats. Did the review point out limitations or areas we still don't fully understand?
Oh, absolutely. Good science always acknowledges what we don't yet know. A major limitation is the need for more long-term studies, especially ones that use consistent methods, comparing animal and human research more directly.
And the exercise programs vary a lot in studies.
They do. Different intensities, durations, types of exercise.
Yeah.
It makes comparing results tricky sometimes. And many human trials are shorter than a year. So seeing really long-term effects is difficult.
You mentioned inconsistencies and brain volume findings too.
Yes, in some of the meta-analyses. Likely due to smaller sample sizes in the original studies or those differing protocols we talked about. The precise mechanistic links are still being worked out too.
We still don't know exactly how much exercise boosts new neuron growth in humans.
That's still an open question, yes. We also need more research on potential sex differences. Men and women might respond slightly differently regarding certain factors like brain-derived neurotrophic factor or irisin.
Anything else?
The relationship between exercise duration, age, and some exerkines seems complex and needs more study. And those links between exercise, gut bacteria, oral bacteria, and the brain, still lots to learn there.
Okay. So considering all that, what's the overall expert consensus coming out of this review? What's the main message?
The main message is really quite strong. The evidence is mounting that exercise, especially endurance exercise that boosts your cardiorespiratory fitness, is a genuinely valuable preventive strategy against age-related cognitive decline.
So doctors and public health folks should be pushing this more.
Absolutely. The authors strongly advocate for integrating this type of exercise into public health initiatives and recommendations. They also see exciting future potential for personalized exercise plans.
Personalized? How?
Using things like multi-omics, looking at genes, proteins, metabolites, and maybe artificial intelligence to identify individuals at higher risk and tailor exercise interventions just for them.
Wow. But we still need more research.
Definitely. More long-term studies across diverse populations are crucial to really nail down the specifics of the relationship and figure out the absolute optimal exercise approaches.
Okay, let's bring it all home. What's the call to action for our listeners based on this deep dive?
The core message is, get moving regularly. Think about incorporating physical activity into your routine, and importantly, don't shy away from activities that get your heart rate up, that increase the intensity.
So check official guidelines, maybe?
Yes, look at recommendations from reputable health organizations. But also, just reflect on your current activity level. What small, manageable changes could you make? Maybe adding a bit more time or pushing the intensity slightly.
It doesn't have to be running a marathon tomorrow.
Not at all. Small, consistent steps.
Okay, here's a final thought for you listening. Could adding just a few short bursts of higher intensity activity into your week be a surprisingly potent tool for safeguarding your long-term brain health? And what's one small step you could take this week, starting today or tomorrow, to explore that possibility?
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.